Hi, and welcome to That's Ruddy Mysterious, a podcast of short tales about true mysteries. What happened to the Flannan Isles Lightkeepers? Who was responsible for the Gardner Museum heist? I'm not going to solve those mysteries, but they'll be interesting to learn about. I'm your host, Kelly with an I. Transcripts for all episodes can be found at that'sruddymysterious.wordpress.com. No apostrophe and no exclamation point. Today's tale is about the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist. In the early hours of March 18, 1990, while revelers were still in the streets celebrating St. Patrick's Day, a car pulled up to the side entrance of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston, Massachusetts. Over the next 81 minutes, they would pull off one of the greatest art heists in our history. Two men got out of the car and rang the bell. They told the security guard on duty that they were responding to a disturbance in the museum. The guard broke protocol and let the officers in through the employee entrance at 1:24 a.m. The officers asked the guard to step away from the desk, saying they had a warrant out for him, so the guard did so. The two men then tied him and the second guard on duty up in the basement of the museum, declaring, "Gentlemen, this is a robbery." We know what happened next because the museum was equipped with motion sensors. The two men went up to the second floor. The sensors sent an alarm with each room that was entered. At 1:48 a.m., the alarm sounded and created a printout. "Someone is in the Dutch room. Investigate immediately." The Dutch room is on the second floor of the museum and is where the most famous stolen works resided prior to the heist. In the Dutch room, the thieves got to work cutting Rembrandt's Christ in the Storm on the Sea of Galilee and A Lady and Gentleman in Black from their frames. They also removed Vermeer's The Concert from its frame. This painting is said to be the most valuable, unrecoverable painting in the world. The thieves also removed Flink's landscape with an obelisk from its frame. They pulled an ancient Chinese bronze gu or beaker from a table. The last thing they took from the Dutch room was a small self-portrait etched by Rembrandt, which was on the side of a chest. They removed yet another Rembrandt from the wall but left it behind. It's believed that they thought they had taken it, because it was left standing on the floor backwards, with the wooden back of the painting pointing outward. In total, the thieves spent about 40 minutes in the Dutch room. While one of the thieves was still working in the Dutch room, the second thief moved on to the short gallery. The short gallery is on the second floor as well. In this room, the thief took 5 Degas paintings, 3 mounted jockeys, Leaving the Paddock, Procession on a Road Near Florence, and 2 sketches titled Study for the Program. They also attempted to take a Napoleonic banner. Having been thwarted by the screws holding the banner inside the frame, the thief instead took a bronze eagle finial that sat atop the frame. The thieves passed through other rooms, passing by pieces that were much more valuable than the Chinese gu that they stole. At 2:28 a.m., the men returned to the security counter. They took the security footage and the printout of the motion sensor alarms. The museum was able to reprint that, however. At some point, the thieves went into the blue room and took Manet's Chez Tortoni. For some reason, the motion sensor didn't go off in that room, despite testing showing that it was working. So we can't be sure at which point they took that one. The thieves made 2 trips to their vehicle to load all the works that they'd stolen. By then it was 2:45 a.m. The thieves had spent 81 minutes in the museum. They took off, leaving the guards tied up in the basement, and there the guards stayed until the real police arrived at 8:15 a.m. The 13 works that were stolen were valued at hundreds of millions of dollars, but were not the most valuable pieces in the museum at the time. The museum believes that the Rembrandts were the real targets. At the time of the theft, other museums around Boston had been robbed of their Rembrandts as well. To this day, the museum has left empty frames hanging where the stolen works should be. The museum, the FBI, and the U.S. Attorney's Office are all still looking for leads as to who is responsible for the Isabella Gardner Museum heist. The FBI has several theories regarding who is responsible. One of their theories is that the heist was planned by a criminal organization. In particular, they believe the Boston Mafia is behind it. At the time, they were involved in a gang war, and the FBI theorizes that Bobby Donati organized the heist in order to negotiate for the release of a higher-ranking mafia member from prison. Donati was murdered about a year after the heist. Another theory is that the works were stolen by the Dorchester neighborhood gang. This gang denies involvement, however, despite sting operations having been conducted and rewards having been offered. The investigation depended heavily on interrogations, informants, and sting operations because there was not much physical evidence left behind at the scene. In 2010, Mafia member Bobby Garante's widow said that Garante gave away 2 of the stolen pieces to Robert Gentile after they met up for lunch in Portland, Maine once. She also said that Garante was friends with an Irish guy by the name of Jimmy, although she was unsure of Jimmy's last name. Later interviews proved that the Irish guy named Jimmy was Jimmy Marks. According to the widow, Bobby killed Jimmy Marks. Police have also linked Garante to Marks. They believe that Marks may have something to do with the heist. Law enforcement conducted several searches of Gentile's home and never found any of the missing artwork. They did, however, find a list of the works that had been stolen from the museum. Robert Gentile died in 2021 and always denied having received the paintings. In 2021, the 1991 cold case murder of Jimmy Marks provided clues that might help find the culprits of the Isabella Gardner Museum heist. Marks was a career criminal and associate of Bobby Garante. He was the victim of a mob-style hit in 1991, and his death remains unsolved. Before his death, however, Marks bragged that he had and had hidden some of the works stolen during the heist. The museum still has a reward of $10 million for any information that leads to the recovery of the missing artwork. They also have a separate reward of $100,000 for any information that leads to the return of the bronze finial stolen off the frame of the Napoleonic banner. They have heard all the theories, so all they're interested in is hearing new facts now related to the heist. What do you think happened at the Isabella Gardner Museum that night?
If you're listening on Spotify, scroll down and let me know what you think. Thanks for listening to today's episode of That's Ready Mysterious. I'm your host, Kelly with an I. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a review and follow That's Ready Mysterious to be updated about new episodes. Tune in next Tuesday for another thought-provoking tale.